Culture at its essence, it's how things get done and how things get handled, how it makes people feel. I've got over 25 years in corporate America, and I've seen an evolution of the places that we work and how we work. Confidence is a journey. I'm not a believer in fake it till you make it. It's fake it till you fail, because you will fail at some point, and we can't hold up masks. And even if we think we're acting the part right, we're not.
Accountability, authenticity, and autonomy. It's what leaders want to achieve, and it's what team members want from their leaders as well.
You know what the through thread through all the A3 is? An environment of trust. They trust you, and you trust them to get the outcomes that you want. But the way it's handled, this is that how in the culture of how it's handled and how folks come together. Still, people are held accountable for it, yet
there is no growth in comfort and no comfort in growth. Yet the big leaps are how careers are made and how businesses excel. So how do you master not knowing at all or feeling like an imposter? How do you have the conversations that lead to trust and, of course, excellence? How do you take charge of the things that you can control? How do you thrive outside your comfort zone? That's what this podcast is about. I'm your host, Wanda Wallace, and it's time to get out of your comfort zone. Welcome to the conversation. Today we're talking about accountability, authenticity, and autonomy. Three really important topics. It's what leaders want to achieve, and it's what team members want from their leaders as well. And all three, how you use all three, are going to define the feel of the organization, the feel of the team around you, in effect, the culture. So the question is, how do you understand them? How do you do a better job of them? And how do you capitalize on those three to create the kind of culture that you're looking for? That's what we're talking about. So my guest today is Andrea Wanerstrand. She's a seasoned leadership strategist and executive coach, founder of A3 Culture Lab, but also over 25 years of experience inside some large companies like Microsoft, Meta, T-Mobile, and Hitachi, just to name a few. She helps leaders shift from burnout to bold influence through her Mindset Maven method. And the A3 philosophy is exactly what we're centered on: authenticity, autonomous, and accountable. Design programs that have impacted leaders from more than 100 countries, blends neuroscience and behavioral strategy, as you're going to see, all with a focus on helping drive really powerful cultural change. So, Andrea, welcome to the conversation.
thank you, Wanda. It's great to be here today. I'm looking forward to this.
I am looking forward to it because these are three topics that I think are really, really important. But I always like to start with the same question every time. Why? Why are you so interested in culture?
Um, I've got over 25 years in corporate America, and I've seen an evolution of the places that we work and how we work. And culture at its essence is in the how. It's how things get done and how things get handled, how, in particular, not if, but when mistakes happen, and how it makes people feel. It's the difference between us going down to burnout and not burnout. So the environment where people show up a great percentage of their life should be in alignment with us as human beings. So human centricity and focusing on it. And let's face it. I mean, we go back even 100 years. It was factories, it was processing, it was get the work done, and we were just workhorses. Well, I think if anything COVID taught us is that we're humans at the end of the day.
I think we sort of knew that before, but I think COVID really did drive that home. And it's a powerful comment, this notion that we can't just be workhouse horses and we can't just think about our employees as the work they produce, as output engines, that we have to think about them in the human side. So what is it that you see most as missing in organizations?
The reason I named my company A3 was it comes down to leadership, the shadow of the leader, and how confident they are as individuals. We teach leadership development, but generally not until about the time they're starting to get to be leaders. So how you actually lead a team, how you lead through others is the critical factor. And in my career, I've had dozens and dozens of leaders and managers that I've worked directly for. And I've also had the opportunity to do the type of work I've done to work with a variety of leaders. And I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. Can't really surprise me at this juncture of my career. But the reason that we really focus at the culture of it is in that essence of the environment, how we feel safe in an environment. We are fight or flight beings. We want certainty, but we're always looking for the threat. And our brains are not innovative and creative in threat. We need to really be in a good environment. And so the gist of all of it comes down to the tone set by leadership and then the tone that happens throughout a team, an organization, or a company
Yeah.
wide.
And I think when you say leadership, you're not just talking about the top of any organization, you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about leadership all the way down. Okay. Confidence as a leader. You're right. We don't teach enough about leadership development. And my contention is we don't teach it nearly early enough. I think we actually have people managing teams and doing big jobs for 10 years before we ever get around to saying, oops, maybe you want to do that a little differently. It frustrates me to no end. That's a separate topic. So why do you say that the confidence the leader has is such a powerful impact on the culture?
So confidence is a journey. Let's get first and foremost. But generally, when you are self-aware and understand what you're capable of, what's out of your comfort zone, and have the confidence to dance in ambiguity. Because let's face it, our leaders today, especially at the top of companies, have to make decisions sometimes with a lot of changing parts in today's marketplace. Confidence is not arrogance. It is the ability to know I've got this. I trust myself to navigate this, and I'm going to do my best. Not be the best, but do my best in moving through, and the confidence to be able to learn something new. So when you have confidence to dance in ambiguity and show up with that authenticity, and I'm not talking like, oversharing, but with a consistent presence, that sets a tone that actually is the foundation for what you can do for innovation and really scaling. But if you're in fear, if you're constantly doubting yourself, even if you don't verbalize it, your team and colleagues know you're
Right,
not confident.
right.
It just emanates.
You described my morning today. Two coaching clients, one of whom is extraordinarily senior, one of whom is moving in that direction, and both of them had, it's not so much as a crisis of confidence, it's that feeling inadequate in some way for very specific reasons, in each one of different cases, events, a whole bunch of stuff, and yet couldn't get their head wrapped around how that was showing up and impacting the people around them. Not so much the direct team as that extended network of people who see you on a regular basis. So it's easy to say as you rise in an organization, you should have confidence. In my experience, it doesn't necessarily go hand in hand. So I think it's interesting. I happen to believe that authenticity, so you get to disagree with me now because you're the specialist on the authenticity, but I happen to believe that authenticity comes from this lovely balance of I know what I'm good at, I know what I know what I can contribute, I know what value I can bring, and humility that says I also know what I don't know, and I know where I've made mistakes, and I know where I need other people to help me out. So what am I missing in that equation?
No, you're spot on. What you're talking about is that self-awareness, right? A lot of us, we all think we're self-aware, but we're always learning something new about ourselves. But the more self-aware you are, the more open you are to that real mirror, and being able to catch yourself when you're behaving in a way that is not congruent with how you want to show up or not
Yeah.
congruent with how it's going to get the output that you really want, right? Then, so you're not really missing anything. I would say the authentic leader, um, first and foremost, I'm not a believer in fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
It's fake it till you fail, right? Because you will fail at something at some point, and we can't hold up masks. Our emotions are physical energy within us, and even if we think we're acting the part right, we're not. because our body's going to betray us. We're going to be tense. We're going to flush. We're going to have a high voice, tight voice, yell, whatever that might be. So I actually think we're pretty well aligned. I would just add the and statement of, and you're striving for self-awareness, right? That lifelong learner of, okay, this is out of my comfort zone. I've been out of my comfort zone before. I have the confidence to dance in ambiguity out of my confidence zone and create a new confidence zone going through this,
Okay.
right? Because growth
So,
doesn't happen in comfort, it's the
right,
discomfort.
right. That's the tagline of the podcast. There's no growth in
Exactly.
comfort and no comfort
Didn't
in
plan that,
growth.
but
Okay.
yes.
All right. So let me go backwards and say you talk about the 3A's. So what are they? Why do each matter? Give me an example of what they look like.
All right, we just have been talking about authenticity, and it starts there. I've been asked before, what's the most crucial one? Well, it's you and how you show up. So showing up authentically. In the end, it takes less energy for you, right? You don't have to be on stage, be performative. You can actually be genuine. Again, depending on what level in the organization you are, you can't always share everything. But are you consistent? Do people know what to expect from you? And hopefully they're not, what they expect is hopefully not when you walk in the door, everybody like, gets to working like one of those old movies that you see that, the boss comes in and everybody starts working. But consistent in a way that folks know if they're going to bring you bad news, how you're going to react. If they're going to bring you good news, you're going to celebrate with them rather than, okay, and what's next? So this aspect of consistency is key to the authenticity. Autonomy is the only way we can scale. And it also motivates and engages employees. Autonomy is when you're giving them ownership. Now you have to set expectations. What are the outcomes? And we'll talk about expectations and accountability in a moment. But autonomy is really giving the individual the space to actually execute and formulate and reiterate in a way that allows everyone in the organization to scale. And we all feel better when we're not being micromanaged, when we're actually capable of doing things. Accountability is crucial. Let's face it, we want to have a great amount of empathy for folks and we want to be nice and kind people. But at the end of the day, we're all going to work to have an outcome that's business oriented. So accountability and that ownership that we've granted in the autonomy is key. And we want to hold people accountable and celebrate what they actually achieve and then course correct as it goes forward. But you can't course correct unless when you're giving them the autonomy and the empowerment and you've backed away from micromanaging, that you've actually set expectations. And what I mean by actually is a lot of folks say to me and I have clients, well, I told them what I needed. Did you validate that what they heard is what you meant? And that is where it falls apart. And then do you step into accountability in a timely fashion so that folks can course correct? And do you do it from a place of kindness, not niceness? Like nice avoids the deep conversation of what might have gone wrong, whereas kindness steps in and focuses on the growth. And it looks something like, well, let's look at this together and let's move it forward versus you didn't do what I said, right? And that partnership and moving things forward and the accountability and the timeliness. Accountability, a lot of folks go, oh, I don't like having to give them bad news, or it's not just bad news, it's celebrating as well. So if we can all be accountable, and if they see you as leader being accountable, then they're going to be accountable. And you're starting to create authentic people. And you know what? The through thread through all the A3 is an environment of trust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They trust you and you trust them
Mm-hmm.
to get the outcomes that you want to.
Well, it strikes me that the three, authenticity, autonomy, and accountability, are what drive the engine of trust. There are more things I think that get it started, but those will actually completely kill it. So it's sort of I got to have a relationship. I got to believe that you care about me. And then if these things are working smoothly and then they get reinforced because we're having success and then we keep doing them, that's where the trust really becomes deeper and longer lasting. At least that's my view.
Absolutely. And the irony is, you mentioned when you're having success. Some of the deepest trust I've seen be built in teams are in moments where the biggest mess up has ever happened. But the way it's handled, this is that how in the culture of how it's handled and how folks come together and still people are held accountable for it, yet they're not belittled and made to feel small, or it doesn't create a sense of fear throughout the rest of the team, no matter the magnitude of the mess. That is also the moment where the deepest trust can be built. And yes, those A3 are engines for it, but it's the consistency and the patterns that people see over time that actually is the essence of what they would describe as their culture. It's not just one moment in time.
Understood. You started the podcast, but I want to pick up this notion of mistakes, because you started at the very beginning to say it's not if a mistake happens, it's when a mistake happens, how do you deal with it? And I agree with you that I don't think you do much in an organizational life without there being a mistake on your team. So I think people get the general sense that they need to handle that well. But I also think in the crisis of the moment, there's panic that happens. So walk us through, how do we handle mistakes with authenticity, autonomy, and accountability? What does that actually look like?
Okay. So panic is from our fear center,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to, in order to move forward and be creative and come up with alternatives, you got to calm your fear center down first. And this is where, I dance in the woo woo of the mind body connection. You have to, if you're the leader in particular setting that tone, you got to take a moment and compose yourself. You need to be intentional, not reactive, right? So if the energy is getting kinetic and everybody's panicking and freaking out and in moving that way, how do you reset and say, okay, this is how we're going to go forward? It doesn't mean you know the answer to going forward, but the how we're going to go forward is we're going to come up with a plan. We're going to take a look at this. We're going to do our best to make it as right as possible. That tone is critical. Otherwise, it is chaos. It is panic, and everyone is running on emotion. And you are going to make even more mistakes because you're not in a clear thinking state, nor can you be creative. I mean, physically, we cannot, because our brains don't work that way when we're in fear center. We are reactive at that point. So the biggest thing that you can do is to take 3 minutes and take a breath and pause. How do you want to show up for these people? Set your intention and move forward for it so that you can then, once one person does that, Wanda, it starts
It
emanating,
starts
right?
emanating, yeah.
Like, okay,
Well,
we're assured, we're
yeah.
confident, we can move forward.
If the leader can be calm about it, that releases some of the pressure and anxiety from everybody else. And you're right, once you are calm, then ideas start to come, solutions start to come, possibilities start to come. But if you're in panic, you can't think anymore. It's just, it isn't going to think. So the first thing is to stop your panic and then breathe that to everybody else.
Yeah. And it's not to make light of it. This is where accountability is, the seriousness and the magnitude. Is it a little mistake or the big mistake? Garners that there's probably consequences. Sometimes it's loss of money, or it's sometimes it's loss of job, but it's never a moving forward strategy to do that from a place of panic, right? So that moment of calm does not mean that you're not upset. You as the individual and the owner, the leader, owner of it all, you might be extremely upset. Deal with your emotion first before you step in, and that's where that calm comes in. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not about, oh, just get calm, right? No, it's the only way you can move forward is getting to that state of calm. And the quicker you get there, the faster you can resolve whatever's
Right,
happened.
right. We might want to use the word centered, though I recognize that's a very psychological word that not everybody loves, but it's that sense of groundedness. It's still serious. I still don't like it. This wasn't what I planned to do with my day. I wish it hadn't happened, but okay, now what?
Mm-hmm.
So that people
Yeah,
can
I
think.
mean,
Okay, so all right,
yeah.
that's step one. Step two?
Well, that's setting expectations again, making sure. So, what does making sure look like? I tell you, Wanda, I want you to have that report to me by Friday, and I need it X, Y, and Z, and um, I need to ensure that the specs from the last two projects are included. And I ask you, you know, what else do you need from me? How are you going to go about it? I do some validation that you've heard what I've said with those details. It doesn't have to be that tactical. It could be even more broader. I want you to come up with a strategy for something, and I'd like you to have these considerations in it. Simply asking, even, at the end of a conversation, what was most useful here in our conversation today? Or how do you think you're going to build your plan to do this? How do you get insights that that the individual has heard what you've asked of them and they're moving forward? This applies in the moments where you're trying to fix the mistake. It's even more critical now that everybody understands expectations. And even if the expectation is brainstorming, where you're not giving a directive of the next steps, that validation of understanding the sense of urgency, how we're going to do this, is how are you validating, not just telling your team, but how are you validating within the team? And this is, it doesn't have to be a direct report type relationship. This
Yeah.
is peer to peer. How are you validating that your colleague understands what you need and vice versa?
Right. Well, and why this is important, who else this is important to, who else this is going to affect. There's a whole host of factors, particularly when you start trying to influence a peer to do something or to take something more seriously. There's a lot of conversation. There's also what you keep saying, talking about, expectations and validating. How many times have somebody told you they wanted something and you've gone through all this effort to generate what you thought they wanted, and yet at the end of the day, that wasn't what they wanted? Sometimes because they didn't know themselves what they wanted, sometimes because they didn't communicate it the way you thought they meant by it, and sometimes we just didn't bother to check. Is this what you meant? Is this what I thought you meant?
Yeah, so you're bringing up the accountability we have on the other side when somebody's trying to set expectations with us, is clarifying that you understand, right? And for peers, it's usually pretty comfortable, but in a hierarchical organization, this is where I see employees that, they don't want to come across like they're questioning the leader's directive. They've told me what to do. That said, asking solid questions so that things become a known fact rather than you simply trying to make an educated guess or completely into an assumption zone is your accountability for the relationship, and making sure that you're showing up in a way for your leader and that part of the trust relationship. So,
Right.
yes, that is part of the factor.
There are so many things that go wrong in the communication. Like, I have a very conceptual brain, so I'm going to give you the general idea. If you are not a conceptually oriented thinker, you will need a lot more details than I have given you to make sure you've understood it. But there can be such a disconnect in the direction we're going, even in that simple little thing. So I think there is a accountability on the leader's part to say, okay, I need to make sure you understood what I intended, or I was clear in my communication, and an accountability on the direct report or the peer to say, wait, let me think and see if let me make sure I've got what you want for sure. All right.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this empathy question for a moment. I find organizations sort of exist on one of two ends in terms of a culture. They're either a super nice organization and highly value being nice to each other and friendly and easy to get along with, and they care deeply, and it can feel like we're being one big happy family, and that can be wonderful in many, many ways. That means that there's a lot of things they're not talking about. So conflict becomes a challenge for them. On the other end of the continuum, I find organizations that say it like they think it, when they think it, how they think it. They can be very blunt, very direct, which can at times feel fairly brutal, maybe uncaring, a little hard on people. How do you think about, and I would say that's a problem because then people feel it's hard to operate in that. It's hard to find some middle ground in that one. So how do you think about helping companies do authenticity, accountability, and autonomy and not get stuck on one end of that spectrum or the other? What's your advice?
Well, first and foremost, how much are you focusing on emotional intelligence? And the heart of the emotional intelligence, are you aware of your emotions and perspectives? The second tier of emotional intelligence is, do you understand other people's emotions and perspectives? So how something might land or react or what they're passionate about, um, the what's in it for me factor. If you're not really clear with the emotional intelligence and really actually understand where another person might be, getting to even influence, which means I can, get my ideas across, but I can also negotiate with you to meet my needs as well as your needs. Well, if I don't have emotional intelligence and understand your needs, so yes, it's empathy, but it's also this aspect of self-awareness, and you can't get there to even influence someone. I do a lot of work with salespeople, and if you want to sell something to somebody, you've got to be able to influence them. And if you can't influence them if you don't understand their emotions and perspectives. So we give physical clues, verbal clues, and how engaged is someone actually. So the sweet spot, if you will, is when you have really emotionally intelligent individuals in an organization that generally care about the other individuals as humans. You don't have to become best friends with them. You don't have to be family, but they're centered in kindness in the aspect that I'm going to say the hard thing, but I'm going to do it in a context that is growth oriented rather than the stick oriented where I'm going to be blunt. And the opposite spectrum of super nice, everything's good. Well, that only lasts so long. I'd rather actually fix an organization where there's the stick, because that's actually easier than everybody being nice, right? They think they're all doing the nice thing and the right thing. But meanwhile, resentment and angst is building up, and you're avoiding the elephants. And I say with plural there's never just one elephant in those organizations. So, how aware and how much are you focusing on the emotions and perspectives of the other individual in context of what you're trying to achieve? That's where the sweet spot can be actually achieved.
That makes a lot of sense. So we're back to that sense of caring about somebody and the person feeling that they're cared about, and you understand where they're coming from and understanding where you're coming from, and there's that mutuality that makes it possible to have a conversation. I have a number of clients that fall on the too nice side of this equation that I described.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, some of them fall on the other side. But in the too nice side, and even when I'm coaching someone in those organizations about how to deliver a very difficult message where performance is not meeting expectations, and there are going to be massive consequences if you can't get that message across so someone understands it. Even when I give them what I think is a very caring way of describing the problem, they come back with, oh, I can't say that. We don't say that kind of thing around here. That's just, oh, that feels too harsh. That feels too blunt. And yes, they're attuned to their own emotions, and I would argue overly attuned, overly worried about the emotions of the other person. Any advice in those situations?
The key sentence that you said there is, we don't do that type of words here. So it's not just about the individual, it's the environment. Everybody expects just to be nice, right? And meanwhile, they're struggling as a business. Maybe they've had great success and they've been able to achieve a lot, but when these harder moments come, this is a form of faking it to make it. When you're being nice, 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 you're not being authentic. so that when you do have to deliver that hard lesson, it is, or message, it's taken in context of growth. It feels more like a stick. So as you're saying, I'm giving them something that a lot of people would consider as empathetic and caring. When you're dancing on the stage of niceness, if you will, any deviation from that is truthful, factual, and um, not just an assumption, but it's actually, this has happened and now we need to correct it, or I see this happening and it's a pattern, we need to look at this. It cannot come from a place of growth. They see it as harsher than it actually is because they've been acting on a stage, if you will.
Right, right. Okay, so we're back to authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
and getting that right. And I also think there's a piece, as you said rightly, there's consistency and authenticity. So if I'm doing that routinely with you, it gets easier for people to take. And if I'm doing it with everybody, it also gets easier to take. Okay. I want to talk for a minute before we run out of time here about autonomy, because here's the conundrum I see with this one. No doubt, every person you talk to being managed out there wants more autonomy. Okay. The research on human motivation is crystal clear that more autonomy is motivating. At the same time, I'm sitting in the middle of an organization as a leader, trying to get stuff done, trying to please my boss, who's not terribly great on the mistakes, for example, by the way, or on the empathy, or whatever the equation is. And I've got a junior team that isn't quite delivering. So that anxiety about how much freedom can I really give them
Mm-hmm.
is real. So what's your advice for people in those situations?
Yeah, so autonomy can be on a scale, right? You've got to meet them where they're at for their capability levels. If somebody's new to something, you don't expect them to actually execute it with like somebody that's a seasoned pro at whatever X is. So, how are you teaching and leading them in those moments? How are you building accountability and autonomy over time so that the next pass through, they've been through it, they can do it completely on their own. There's a nuance here of autonomy doesn't just mean I'm going to dump it on your lap and I'm gone and I'm absent, right? It means I'm setting expectations, and if I'm going to parse out that autonomy so that I build my confidence and your confidence so that I can trust that you can get it done right, that is a process that you go through. If they are seasoned professionals, they should be executing and capable of doing it on their own. And you've given them autonomy and they're still coming to you. I ask the leader, did you train them to come to you? Are they still looking for permission? Right? So it's not just about leaders granting autonomy and empowerment. We also have a workforce that has been trained to ask for permission. And so, how do we help them unlearn that? And that is by giving them autonomy in chunks to begin with, if you will, so that they can build up their confidence in working in an autonomous way. Trust your reaction when they bring it back to you at maybe 80% of what you said rather than 100, and that the world is not going to, fall apart. And then the next time they can be more autonomous. So autonomy is not simply, I mean, I've seen so many, we say you're empowered. Yeah, well, have you let go? But have you let go with guidance and expectations, and you still hold them accountable? Those things as a manager never go away, but you're not micromanaging, the font size and down to the nits and how to do that. How much autonomy are you granting? And do they know they don't have to ask permission, and for what they don't have to ask permission for?
Right, right. So we're right back to how the three of these all fit together. So the accountability in that I have been very clear about expectations and the boundaries and all the pieces that go in that, and you've understood that in a way that's accurate, that we're communicating clearly on that one. There's the authenticity that I show up in a consistent way, in a confident way, in a humble way, so that we can have a real conversation and it just doesn't feel like a put down or a fake or some variation on that theme. And then we can move into a space of autonomy. because those first two have to be in place in order to really be able to say, here, you can do this. This is over to you, or at least over to you in this bite. Like you, I see an awful lot of leaders who want autonomy, but who love to step in and solve the problem. So what you're doing is training your team to always bring the problem to you without a solution. Mm-hmm. They might be able to come up with a solution, but you have trained them that you like to do the solution. So they want to please you, so they're going to bring you the problem and let you solve it. They may hate that, but they're going to keep doing it. So there's a little bit of courage to get yourself out of the problem solver role and into a different kind of role.
Absolutely. You've created an overdependent team. And what is it about you and your identity, if I dare go there, that still needs to be in the weeds to fix it? Be the fix it, the save the team. You can save them in a different way and help them save themselves, right? So when I'm working with a leader is, what's really at the heart of you needing to fix it for them? And I'll hear, well, they're not going to get it right otherwise. Well, why don't you teach them?
Or why don't we not worry about perfectionism quite that much? Or why don't you do reiteration? There are variations on that theme that we can come back to.
100%. And the underscore of it is generally some type of fear of not being enough, fear of not being needed, fear of being irrelevant, fear of somebody else getting on them because they and their team got it wrong. So it comes back to that fear center that we have that's natural for us as human beings.
Right. So now we're back to self-awareness, both to understand what is driving my own fear, to understand when I'm stepping in, what it is I'm doing, what's my identity around stepping into that, and can I calm my fear center? Because if I can't, then it's very hard to lean into the accountability, the authenticity, and the autonomy.
Okay. Exactly.
Okay. Andrea, what a fun conversation. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the topic, as you can see, but
it's a great topic.
We still need to talk about it more. So thank you for having me on today.
It's a pleasure. Somebody wanted to reach out to you. How could they find you?
One of the easiest places to find me, and I'm quite active on LinkedIn. They can reach out to Andrea Wanerstrand there. Also, a3culturelab.com. And I'm sure in the show notes we'll have some information as to how they can connect with me.
Absolutely. All right. Looking forward to that as well. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for the conversation. And to all the listeners, join us next week for another episode in Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone. Send us a message. You can go to outofthecomfortzone.com. Just click on the contact and tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Any questions are also welcome too. And until next week, we'll see you then.